Good evening, members of the audience. We're going to get started shortly, but if you're interested in talking tonight on the study session, I will ask if you could please fill out a speaker card and turn it into staff, and they can pass it along to us to call you. I think we only have really one item, so it's pretty clear that we don't need to put what item that is. So we'll get started shortly, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Thank you. Good evening. I'm going to call the City of West Covina, sorry about that, Planning Commission meeting for Tuesday, July 24th, 2018. Let the record reflect it's 7 p.m. We're going to start right on time. And we're going to start with a pledge of allegiance, then followed by a moment of silent prayer. Commissioner Castellanos will be leading us in both those items. Please rise, everyone.
Place your hand over your heart. Repeat after me. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated.
Thank you for that, Commissioner Castellanos. Roll call, staff?
Yes, Commissioner Holtz, Commissioner Redholz.
Here.
Commissioner Hang, Commissioner Castellanos.
Here.
Chairman Jimenez.
Present. Everyone's here. Approval of minutes for the regular meeting of July 10th, 2018. Any changes, omissions, additions? Seeing none, they stand as approved.
Very good.
Oral communication, this is a time and place where any member of the public can address the commission on any item that is not agendized for this evening. We typically limit to 5 minutes for folks wishing to speak. At this moment, is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak on items that will not be discussed as part of our agenda this evening? Okay. Let the record reflect we have no oral communication. We will have a continuation of oral communication towards the end of tonight's hearing, so there will be a second chance for those interested in speaking. Moving on, we do, under public hearings, we have none, so we'll just check that off the agenda and then move on to our non-hearing item, which is a study session for Code Amendment 18-01. This is a discussion regarding the establishment of standards related to commercial marijuana cultivation in the city's M1 manufacturing zone. Staff, Ron, I believe you're going to be presenting?
Yes, that is I. Let me just get the PowerPoint presentation up.
Sorry, I was moving a little too quick for you, huh?
Let's see. All right, very good. Okay, so on April 17th, 2018, the City Council initiated Code Amendment providing direction to staff to process a code amendment for the commercial cultivation of marijuana in the manufacturing zone. On June 12th, 2018, the Planning Commission held a study session, heard from interested parties, and discussed the proposed code amendment for the commercial cultivation of marijuana in the manufacturing zone. That discussion included potential changes to the municipal code, the business section of the municipal code, and possible fee changes for the commercial cultivation of marijuana. The purpose of the study session is to provide the Planning Commission with discussion points and alternatives to standards to be included in the zoning code. After the discussion, the commission may ask for additional information to be provided, which may necessitate another study session. Staff is anticipating a second study session to review standards to be included in the business license section of the municipal code. Sorry here. So as it's indicated in the in your staff report, staff has prepared a table to allow for discussion, alternatives, and recommendations on standards to be included. And those include the approval process, and we'll go through it thoroughly, and location, zoning, the measurement of distance for separation standards, and then separation standards with respect to sensitive uses for residential, religious facility, and educational institution utilized by minors. And lastly, separations standards to another marijuana cultivation use. Let's get this here. So just a brief overview. This is the current zoning, so I just wanted to give you so that way you have some perspective of what the existing zoning is in that area and what we're looking at for tonight's discussion. There we go. So, of course, this is the manufacturing zone, which is located in the northwestern portion of the city. So, essentially, this is all the manufacturing zone within the city. Here you have the adjacent multifamily residential uses, and then to the south, you'll have another slide that shows a depiction of these uses that are in this area. So again, this just shows the city boundary and also the residential uses to the south. Again, this just gives you a little more detail. Again, the industrial area, here's the city's boundaries. And as you can see here, there's school sites here, residential uses here, residential uses here in adjacent Baldwin Park. And then you have industrial uses. This is your multifamily residential use here. You have a commercial business park in this area. And then, as you all know, the San Gabriel Tribune site. And then to the west, you have a mobile home park. And then adjacent to that is the a self-storage facility, and then one site for that zone manufacturing. So as I go through these thoroughly, one is the approval process. And so based on the city council initiated code amendment that directed staff to allow for commercial marijuana cultivation, the code includes multiple processes for discretionary review, including conditional use permits, administrative use permits, and administrative reviews. Staff is recommending that a conditional use permit be in place to process marijuana cultivation allowed in the M1 zone. And this type of use requires a public notice and also a hearing to decide if the use is appropriate. And again, as I'm going through these, please feel free to stop me if you have any questions. Otherwise, I can move forward to the next one.
I do have one quick question, if I might.
Sure.
You know, at the last council meeting with the budget, there's a lot of talk about words, would, could, should. This says should require. Doesn't it always require?
I'm sorry, yes. I thank you for noting that. It does require it, yes.
Yeah, so it's not should.
It should not say should, yes.
Yeah, it should not say should. Okay.
Correct.
All right.
Thank you, Herb.
Thank you.
Okay. So no questions, I'll move on to the next one. So the other one is location. The M1 zone is a location in the city where industrial uses are allowed. There are 51 acres in the M1 zone with approximately 45 parcels. It should be noted that the M1 zone is adjacent to residential uses on the east and on the south, as well as having a residential mobile home park within the zone, and also has a school site located adjacent to the zone, which is the slide that I showed you previous, and a religious facility located in the M1 zone within the Prosperity Business Park. Here, again, following through with the council direction, is to allow in the M1 zone. Very good. Moving on. And third, measurement of distances for separation standards. So currently, the municipal code provides measurement of distance to sensitive uses for adult-oriented uses. Below are 4 measurement of distance options. Option 1, the measurement of distance in a straight line distance from the sensitive use property line to property line site to be used for marijuana cultivation. The second one is the measurement of distance in a straight line distance from sensitive use property line to the building entrance of the marijuana, of the use itself. So it's the building entrance. And third is the measurement of distance in a straight line from the sensitive use property line to the building to be used for the marijuana cultivation. And so here, staff is recommending that it be the property line of the sensitive use to the building, not the building entrance, but the building itself to be used for marijuana cultivation. There's a couple slides that I can actually, hold on one sec. There's a couple slides I'm going to go further on to give you a baseline to depict what that could possibly mean. But otherwise, I can take any questions on this one.
You know, Ron, maybe just before we continue, similar to other study sessions, should we pause at each of the options to discuss, or would you rather just hear the whole presentation all the way through?
I think he's doing the whole presentation, right? You're going through each,
That is correct, yes.
and then we can go back.
Okay, yes, okay, very good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Just wanted to see if there was a preference for
Okay.
one way or another. Okay, that's fine. I can hold off my
Okay.
question till then. Thank you.
Very good. Okay, so 4 are the separation standards. So currently, the code provides separation standards for adult-oriented businesses, small recycling facilities, material recycling facilities, and solid waste transfer or processing stations, and tattoo businesses. The separation standards for the uses vary in distances, but provide a basis to consider a distance that the commission determines appropriate for commercial marijuana cultivation. Staff did not include parks in the list, as there are no city parks in close proximity to within that area. Below is so within the chart, I've itemized the distance separation for those sensitive uses. And for adult-oriented uses, you have 500 feet to the property line of a church, school, park, and a residential zone. The other is 750 feet of another adult-oriented business. And the last one for adult-oriented business is 100 feet from a civic center. And then for small recycling facilities, the code requires a distance of 250 feet to property line of the residential use. And then for material recycling facilities and solid waste transfer or processing stations, 500 feet to property line is required from a residential use. And then for tattoo use, you have 300 feet to property line of a residential, religious facility, public park, and educational institution utilized by minors. And then lastly, 1,500 feet from perimeter of the tenant space of any tattooing use to another tattooing use. So again, this just summarizes what's already in the municipal code, so that way you understand what's already existing. And here, to be specific, residential, you have separation standards. Staff put together a list of options, 1 through 6, and they range from having no standard for a sensitive use such as residential, and that goes from 100 to 500 feet. Here, staff is recommending that we establish a separation requirement of 300 feet. And again, I'll show this later on with a depiction of what that could look like. And this would eliminate cultivation along much of the San Bernardino frontage. Religious facility, again, no separation standard, option 1, and a distance between 100 and 500 feet. Here, with the religious facility, sensitive use, staff is recommending no separation standard, as there is a church within the M1 zone. And then educational institution utilized by minors, again, no separation standard, and we've indicated a distance of 100 to 500 feet. Here, staff is recommending a separation requirement of 300 feet. This would eliminate cultivation again along the San Bernardino frontage near the elementary school. So this is what I was mentioning earlier on. This is So again, it's a little hard to read, but what I wanted to do here is to show you that I put in a 300-foot buffer to all the manufacturing sites. And so they all the properties that are along San Bernardino Road essentially touch a sensitive use. You have the school site, it touches multifamily residential. The residential uses here, and the residential uses along within Baldwin Park here. So that's just a baseline, so that way you understand what the 300-foot looks like. And here, specifically, what I've noted in this slide is the properties. There's about 10 properties that do not touch any sensitive use. So this is entirely, these are the lots, essentially this is the area we're looking at if it were not to touch a sensitive use within 300 feet. And 5, separation standards to any other marijuana cultivation use. Currently, the code requires separation standards, again, for those uses that I've indicated for the adult-oriented business, tattooing businesses. Staff is recommending no separation to any other marijuana cultivation use because based on the geographic area, the large lot sizes, and it only comprising of only 45 parcels within that zone, by including a separation standard to other like uses could drastically limit the number of properties that can allow for marijuana cultivation. So again, here we've provided 3 options, one being no separation, second, establishing a separation of 300 feet, and third, establishing a separation standard to any other marijuana cultivation within 500. Here we're recommending no separation to any other marijuana cultivation use. So that concludes staff's presentation. The city attorney is present for any specific questions, but otherwise, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission provide some appropriate direction for each one of these.
I believe first there may be some questions from the commission. Anyone wishing to kick it off? Commissioner Redo?
Thank you. Where does the Tribune building fit in as far as separation from any of those sensitive uses?
Okay. Let me use this slide because the other one's a little convoluted. So this is the Tribune site here. So it's a bit of an L shape. It runs along the railroad here, and then it runs all the way down to San Bernardino, and then it comes up, and then it goes to Azusa Canyon. So this is the site in question here, and it abuts the Prosperity Business Park, which is here on the east.
But it doesn't, as far as the 300 feet or?
So as far as sensitive uses,
yeah.
Because the lot fronts San Bernardino Road, the sensitive use at 300 feet, you're essentially the schools within that and the residential uses.
So that doesn't matter whether you use the property line or the entrance of the building? Would that?
No, so that changes things. So now you
Yeah.
have, and again, we can go jumping around here. So the building is here. It's towards the back on the north side. So if you were to, and I haven't done that measurement, that again, we can do that at a later study session. But if you were to provide a separation standard to the building, then you can see that it's outside of the 300 feet. Yeah.
Commissioner Holtz?
Question, I know there's a church there in that commercial area. Is it possible to make an exception and grandfather that one in and have any future churches that might go in there religious have a distance between?
Possibly. That could be something that it's up to the commission. If that's something that you would like staff to look at, we can definitely look at that, yes.
Yeah, I don't want to kick them out, but on the other hand, I think we need to have some kind of separation for future religious facilities. And then the other thing on separation, I have a problem with no separation to any other marijuana cultivation use. I know we have a limited space, but is our focus to see how many we can jam in there? There's no separation?
Oh, at this time, there's no discussion, there's nothing, no direction as far as pinpointing exactly which parcels are to be used, allow for marijuana cultivation.
Yeah, the way I read this, it's kind of like, we've got a very limited space, so let's not make any separation standards so we can get as many of them in there as possible. That's the way I kind of read that, and I'd kind of like to have a separation between the cultivation. That's from my seat anyway.
Very well.
I just, I understand where Commissioner Holtz is going there. I kind of read that the same way, that this could drastically limit the number of properties that can allow for marijuana cultivation. I mean, is that a bad thing to want to limit it? I mean, or is that something for us to decide?
It's for, basically, it's for something for you guys to decide
Okay.
and discuss.
Got it, okay.
Okay, maybe we can, I think I have a couple points on that as well. Any of the other commissioners have any questions or comments? Just 3 items on my part, Ron. Just when we talk about under item 3, the separation option 3, and we talk separation between a sensitive use and then the building line of a marijuana cultivation use, do we want to clarify that we're talking about the primary building where marijuana cultivation will potentially take place in? I can see a situation where maybe there's an accessory building or, there's a storage shed of sorts, and then you may have to apply the separation requirement. Just maybe food for thought as we continue to deliberate a bit here. Under separation requirement between the 3 uses with residential, I'm going to assume we mean all residential, single family, as well as multi?
That is correct, yes.
Okay.
But I could see where, just like with the suggestion on the primary building, we can make that note.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just educate me a little bit. I'm not sure if educational institution utilized by minors, are we talking about the schools there?
Exactly, yes.
Okay, so we just got a little fancy with the wording.
So essentially what we did is, for consistency, that language is already in the municipal code with respect to the other uses that have distance requirements.
Okay, good to know. I was just wondering, it's a fancy wording for school. Okay. Commissioner Holtz?
51 parcels?
No. So staff has not, no, we have not.
You don't know who owns the property?
At this time, no, staff has not done any research or on the ownership of all those parcels within the manufacturing zone.
I would think that'd be kind of important to me, from my seat.
Yes, and that's some, again, this is a discussion, so that's something that we can bring back to the commission, so that way you guys know who the property owners are and the uses.
I don't know how my fellow commissioners feel, but I'd like to know, because I know we had some issues with some of the property owners in that general area type of thing. I'd like to know who it is.
Okay.
Well, were they notified?
Yeah, were they notified?
So they were not notified. The only notification was, as directed by council, is there is a notification for those interested in marijuana cultivation for the code amendment, but otherwise, the property owners were not notified of the study session.
Since there's only 51 properties, is it possible to notify them, let them know?
We can do that, yes. Yeah, we can do
So
that.
this way they have an input.
Okay.
I have one more.
Sure.
On the separation standards, most of the other ones, it's pretty much property line to property line. And on the marijuana, it's property line to the building. Is there a reason why it's not to the property line on the marijuana use? Or do we want to get more?
I'm sorry.
I believe in reference to the separation from sensitive uses, we go from property line of residential to the building line.
Right.
Whereas with the separation between the 3 subclass, I believe it's property line to property.
So when we were looking at this, if you notice, some of the buildings are, like for example, the Tribune site. Tribune site is towards the north. And again, it was just a suggestion, but as you can see, some of the buildings are set back from the street. So again, given that the property is all front San Bernardino Road, it essentially limits the number of sites that can allow for marijuana cultivation. So being creative, again, the suggestion is to maybe use the building line, because some of these buildings are set back, such as the Tribune site. You have some buildings that are back here. You have a building that's back here. And again, if you use the property line, essentially you're going to hit that sensitive use. So I hope.
It basically will further reduce the number of potential or eligible sites depending how this ordinance looks when proposed.
Exactly.
Okay.
Did I understand you to say on San Bernardino Road that all these areas would be at least 300 feet from the San Bernardino Road, the buildings?
Yeah, so the building, so essentially, and again, we haven't done that. And again, this is a discussion. We can bring that back.
Or parcels or whatever you want to call it.
Exactly.
But they're at least 300 feet rear from San Bernardino Road.
So it would be from the building face to the sensitive use instead of from the property line that abuts San Bernardino Road. So obviously then that pushes it over into hitting the sensitive use.
I'm not sure what you're saying. Is the parcels that are there that are zoned for this cultivation, are they at least 300 feet back from San Bernardino Road?
Some are and some aren't. I just from when I was working on the GIS, just ballparking it. Some of them fall within it, some of them don't. But again, we can go back and analyze that and bring that back to you guys.
Well, how close are the closest ones?
Again, I'm just kind of shooting off the hip here. I would say 150 feet.
Okay. Thank you. I thought I saw there was 300 feet.
Ron, I have a question. Since it's only 51 property owners, and if you were to draw a line from the sensitive, let's just say whether it's 100, 300, or 400 feet, I guess it starts from 100 to 500 feet, then I guess we can see how many property it's being hit.
Yeah.
Because currently we don't really know.
Yeah, so for example, like most of these that are here, if you just hit property line, most of the lots that face San Bernardino are not going to fall within
Correct.
a sensitive use.
Correct.
So
But
now
we don't know how, well, from looking at it, I can't really tell how far the parcel go. So it seems like some parcels are put relatively deep with many buildings in there, and it seems like. And you're trying to say that even though with a separation requirement, they may not be able to cultivate on the first building, but perhaps maybe toward the inner buildings, they may be able to cultivate. Is that what's trying to be accomplished?
And again, that as Commissioner Jimenez had mentioned, defining what an accessory building and a primary building is, but the key would be defining the primary building. But I would imagine that it would be the distance to the primary building.
Yeah.
The mayor just informed me that he's got information he can share with us about along San Bernardino Road, if you'd like.
I think to be fair, we should probably finish deliberation
And then-
first, and then open it for public hearing, and then maybe we can comment on that. I think it would be a best approach.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
I have one question. Somebody keeps referencing 51 property owners. Where's that? There's 51
I'm sorry, there's
acres,
51, there's
acres and 45 parcels.
45 parcels. Thank you for making that note. Yes, 45 parcels.
Okay. So it's the 45 parcel, it's the ownership of those parcels that are in,
That is correct,
Question?
yes. Yes, it's 51 acres, 45 parcels.
okay, and it doesn't necessarily mean there's 45 individual owners either.
That is correct.
No,
Could be a lot less,
That is absolutely correct.
could be one.
could be one.
And the parcels could be tied through association. Certain sites are comprised by multiple parcels as well, I would think.
Yes, and I can confirm that when I was working on the when we were working on the GIS map, we did encounter that, so I can tell you yes.
Fair enough. If there are no questions from the commission, let's pause for a minute, maybe invite folks from the public that wish to talk on this topic, and then maybe we can continue deliberating and bring our conclusions to staff. So let's open up the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this topic, please? Okay, we have a couple takers. Yeah. Okay. Okay, we'll let the gentleman with the red shirt.
I can't give you an opinion one way or the other, because this will be going back to me. But what I wanted to supply a little bit of information on the frontage of San Bernardino Road. The building right, if Ryan can point up where the Tribune is. Now, all that building right in front of that belongs to Heavenly Pet Resort on San Bernardino Road. She owns 2 properties right there. And those, I guarantee you, she's not selling those for anything. She just spent $1 million on one to revamp it a couple of years ago. So those are hers, and she owns 3 different properties. 2 of them, she owns that one in West Covina and Temple City and someplace else. So that one's right there, okay? Now, if you go, what would be going east? Okay, right next to that one, right past the parking lot right there, that's the properties that DC Corporation bought, and he has commercial condos there. Now, some of those commercial condos that he built there, he has sold them. So that might be some of the different owners, and he leased a lot of them out, and a lot of them, they were sold. And if you go a little bit east that next, that's the old, it's Blackard's and the lumber that used to be there. Now, DC Corporation owns both of those, and he plans on building commercial condos there. So that's the separation between the homes there. And I know that, and if you go the other way around the other side of the Heavenly Pet Resort, you have a maintenance yard right there, and I think Athens may still own it, and they store stuff in there. Then on San Bernardino Road, you have, I think it's Tucker Towing. No, that's moving on down. That's on all the way down. Towing Industrial building.
Tow is here.
They are building tow trucks. Tucker is another tow company. That's that one, and there's a little office right there next to the Tribune. That's exactly what's on San Bernardino Road. From the Tribune to there, that's really the only, and on the corner of San Bernardino Road and Azusa Canyon Road, there's a big trucking company that stores their big, the big buses that they do the tours and stuff with. Yeah. So that's what you have along San Bernardino Road. And then you have the houses on this side of it. Yeah. And then so I have the in and out, and then you have the school. But from the property line to the schools are way past the 300-foot yard. You know, I've done this when they were trying to build houses over there, before they built the commercial condos. I went through all of this. And I've lived over there 47 years. So I can tell you that's exactly what it is. Now the rest of it, as you go down further, that's a different story. But some of those difference in the homeowner, the property owners and stuff like that, that could be mixed in with the DC Corporation, the buildings and the commercial condos they built there, because some of those are privately owned. I know Mike Tui owns one of those buildings in there. One of the little office, not the whole, he owns a little shop in there. So I'm just saying that there are individually sold or they're just leased out. So that's the information you might want to know as far as San Bernardino Road is. That's all I can tell you.
Perfect. Thank you for that information. I believe, Mr. Stewart, you wanted to speak?
Veronica. Hold on.
A couple of questions. The green zone right up here is exactly where we're talking, and that's the only place in West Covina we can do it, right?
Right. And so,
okay.
Yeah.
So the green zone, I'm familiar with the buildings there. That's where the church is at, right in there. I've been in that church, did some work in there. So that's where the Cook family has built all those buildings, right?
So that's here.
They're all up there?
That's here.
The church is up there?
The church is in the business park here.
Okay, so this is that way. Okay, but I can see we got very few buildings there that to start with that are possible, you know, for what we're looking at. Even though you got 45 sites, I mean, a lot of them wouldn't be suitable for what they're doing as far as what they have to do to remodel it to get it done, you know. So I would be in favor of no distance between them. And because the city, you got to realize that hopefully the city will make something off of this. And the fewer buildings you have, the less possibility you're going to have of making anything. And it's unfortunate, the ones across San Marino Road on the edge, they're pretty good size, so they're taking up a lot of room. So there's not too many buildings behind there that are a possibility. So I would say, does anybody know, or are those buildings occupied now? Are there any empties in there, or do you know?
No.
We don't know. So our chances are pretty slim because they're not new buildings, so chances are they're already occupied. So our chances of getting in there, it's going to be slow for the city. But I would like to see it with no limitations on the distance between them and go from there. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, if you don't mind just filling out a card, giving it to staff. Anyone else wishing to speak? I will. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, just a point. If this comes back to us, Ron,
Yes.
I would appreciate the slides being much larger, at least the area we're talking about.
Very good.
It's really an eye strain to see what you're talking about. So if we could blow that up, that area that we're talking about,
Okay.
I think it may be a lot more helpful.
Fair enough. Let me just quickly, for the record, just close the public testimony portion of this item. That way we can take it back to the commission discussion. So I think Commissioner Holtz just talked a little bit about maybe some enhanced mapping efforts to help aid us in the decision-making process. Who wishes to take the discussion on? Any further comments?
No. You know, the city council went back and forth on this quite a bit. You know, first they were going to do it, then they weren't going to do it. You know, then they are going to do it, so it came back to us. So it's really on us to do what we're doing and to come up with some parameters to take this code amendment to the next level so it can eventually go back to them for the final, you know, approvals on it. So, Ron, do you anticipate another study session just for the budget licensing? I mean, what do we call it? The business licensing process. Is that a separate study session from another session on this?
That is correct, yes.
So it'll be separate unto itself?
That'll be separate. So that we anticipate if we move forward with what we've recommended here, but if you would like further information based on this study session, we can come back, and thereafter, if at that point it's complete, then we'll move on to the business license section.
Okay. Well, I do think we need to have another study session on this, separate and apart from the business license, just so we can get some clarification on the ownership and the occupancy of the buildings and that kind of a thing. So I think, you know, the more information we have, this is pretty critical and important. I think we need to have as much information as we can before we, you know, put something down.
Correct. If I may just piggyback very quickly off the discussion. So the idea, Ron, is we're going to have a business license discussion where we're going to talk about the financing mechanisms, how scoring, or is it going to be something as simple as someone walking in to get their business license, they're in business, right?
Again, the fees, as far as fees are concerned, that's up to the city council, but these are just, the direction is you can make recommendations on it, and so that we move that forward with, to the city council. But as far as making a decision, no.
Okay, I was just, I guess I was going to start to lean on performance standards. If
Yes,
someone
performance
comes in,
standards,
we would
yes.
like to see some level of a quote-unquote investment in the property, not just come in, you know, fire up a few lights and we're in business. I would like to see some certain investment in these potentially underperforming properties, and how does all that look? And again, maybe I'm a couple steps ahead when we haven't really even seen the next one, but that's just my thought. I'm going to offer a few more points, at least on my end, and then I will turn it over to the rest of the commission. Is there a difference between the word cannabis and marijuana, and is there a reason why maybe we're not mirroring what the state typically is using as a definition of this use, and are we a little too far down the road to, I guess, change the wording or the verbiage to be consistent with the state?
I'll refer this to the city attorney.
Okay.
Jerry Meadows, they are legally interchangeable. Marijuana means cannabis, and cannabis means marijuana. The only legally distinct aspect, if you're talking about hemp or industrial hemp and industrial hemp are distinct from marijuana and cannabis, but for legal intents and purposes, they are one and the same under the state regulations.
Just wanted to double check that. Okay. Any other commission questions? Look to my right here, Commissioner Holtz.
I'm having a memory fade here. What was the city that you gave us the study report on? Costa
City
Mesa?
of Costa Mesa, yes.
Unless I'm wrong, when I read through that, they didn't have any separation standards in there, did they?
Commissioner Holtz, if I can clarify, since I also work for the city of Costa Mesa, and I was instrumental in drafting Costa Mesa's ordinance, which was adopted as a ballot measure. Costa Mesa Measure X does not have a separation requirement, but it does geographically limit to a small corner of the city in the northwest, so the northwest portion of the city, or northeast portion of the city, I should say. But there's no separation requirement.
Okay, yeah, I just, because we're talking about separation standards, I noticed they didn't have any. I just, okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Hing?
I'd like to add that if the next study sessions, we should notify the owners of the parcel, at least to let them know that this is, going on and to see if their input. I'm a little bit concerned regarding the commercial condos that they purchased and then we're converting to this. I mean, they might love it and they may not. I like to, notify them, let them know, and then see to include them in our next study session if that's possible.
Very well. I've already made note of it.
So here's my thought. I picked up on about 4 or 3 items that maybe merit some direction to staff and maybe just going to help move this along. One, I think Commissioner Hing, I just made a note about the notification to owners of these parcels. But Commissioner Holtz also mentioned about getting information related to that ownership. Any thought for the future discussion on this item? Would you like to see that? Yes? Okay, that's a yes. I have a second discussion point by Commissioner Holtz as well, as it relates to the separation between other cannabis or marijuana, interchangeable, right, Tarquin? Separation between the one operator versus the other. I know there may be further discussion on this. Okay, so Commissioner Holtz would like to see separation between marijuana operators. I know there was discussion also on the table about that may potentially hinder the use of this green belt that you're proposing as part of your map, because if we add one operator there, right, and that means that you can't be located within whatever that distance looks like from another.
Just for clarification, this area that I've highlighted essentially is the area that's outside of the sensitive uses. So no churches, no residential, multifamily, single family, and schools. So essentially, this is the area that we're talking about.
Okay.
But I just wanted to give you
yeah. I mean, my opinion on that is I understand that we would like to separate them, the uses, but I think there's also a benefit to just clustering them without requiring a separation requirement between cannabis operators. It just allows, well, one, obviously for a certain number of properties versus trying to see where else we can eke them out. So at least that's my opinion. If you have them centrally clustered, maybe from a policing standpoint, they can quote unquote police each other as well as policing efforts on on the city's behalf. It's centralized. At least that's my opinion on that topic.
Yeah, I share that opinion. I would rather go with the staff recommendation based on what the chair just I'd rather have them clustered too as opposed to spread out. And I think we're kind of forcing a spread out if we enforce a 300 feet or something like that. I think we're really looking at a way too much distance. There should be, I agree, I think there should be no separation.
Okay.
I guess I'd like to know what the city's focus is, if they want to have as many as possible, or if they want to have a a smaller number, that, you know, but are they just after that they want to put in as many as possible? Is that their thrust? I can't answer that question, you know?
Can I say something? I don't think we have decided whether we're going to do the conditional use permit. So if that is the case, they still do need to come to Planning Commission.
So what we can do, since just so that way this is a linear
discussion.
So that way it's a linear discussion. So if you'd like, we can go back to item 1 and then we can discuss it, get direction, and then move on to the next one.
All right, I was trying to cut some corners here. Okay, sorry about that. So let's, you want to take it away, Ron?
Sure. So, 1 being the approval process, again, we're recommending that it be a conditional use permit. Again, it requires a public hearing. It requires a notification within 300 feet of the parcel. All owners and occupants would be notified.
And this would be the same conditional use permit that we would apply for anything else that requires a CUP? Or do we see a specialized use permit for marijuana?
At this point, it would be a conditional use permit. And then not to get into any specifics, moving on to the next study session, we'll get into performance standards and what that would require as far as a business license application for that use.
Okay.
But for here, it would be a conditional use permit for that use.
Okay.
Ron, can I ask a question regarding the conditional use permit? So looking at the parcel, even if we have a conditional use permit, it could be just 1 or 2 owner that's being notified because of the 300 feet?
Yeah, because the lots are deep. They're very wide. That could be the case, yes.
So to answer your questions, it may not.
I guess where I'm having trouble, I have no idea how big that piece of property is and how big the facilities are. Could there be just one facility that would take up that whole block? Or is it 20? I have no idea.
Potentially. Yeah, potentially, because again, the sites are so large, and the buildings that are on those sites, they're also very large. They're large industrial manufacturing uses. But again, the underlying zoning, depending whether the building is 3,000 square feet or 20,000 square feet, it's whether the use is going to be allowed in that zone on that site.
Well, they can make new buildings. They don't have to go into the buildings that are there. I mean, they can tear it, if they
potentially, yes.
Or 45 parcels and took out plans for one giant building, they could do that, right?
Potentially, yes.
Yeah, I just don't have an idea how that's going to fit in there. A bunch of small ones or big ones. If it's one big one, you don't have separation problems.
That could happen, I would think, if someone's willing to gobble up the parcels. But so, any comments regarding the conditional use permit process for cultivation?
Well, I think it's got to be a CUP process.
Okay.
And I think, just one quick, I think that even though the actual, legal notification will probably be limited, I think once this gets going, I think there'll be a lot of notice and publicity about it, and I think the public will know, just, word of mouth, and I think the press will probably be covering it also. So I think you'll have people here, but as far as the legal notice, it's going to be a limited legal notice.
All right.
Commission, if I could be heard. You always have the option of increasing the legal notice, of increasing the radius for a notice. I mean, some cities do that on different types of applications or all applications. So you're not stuck with the existing 300 feet. You can enlarge that if you wish.
Well, that being the case, I would like to get as many people notified as we could. This is a big deal, and I think we need the public needs to be heard. The residents, the owner, the people that are most directly affected, especially, need to be heard.
Would staff be interested in some radius distance at this moment, or are we premature on that?
It's up to what the commission feels comfortable. Again, the standard notification that's in the code, as the city attorney mentioned, is 300 feet.
But we can't do 300 feet around M1 zoning on top of that, we can also notify the entire M1 zoning as well for this particular area, because even though the entire M1 zoning consists of 45 parcel.
Yeah, for
So basically, you're notifying 45 potential owner or owners.
For consistency, it would be done on a radius. It would have to be 300, 400, 500 feet, 600 feet.
Yeah, I would agree, because what if you rezone property? It could present, I think, a whole subset of issues that we may not necessarily envision at this moment, given the infancy of where we're at.
I would concur with that.
What is our largest, I think here is 1,500 for a tattoo? Is that, I guess, our most restrictive of separations? And again, I'm probably just, I guess I'm trying to find a nexus between a number.
So that's that's a distance.
Correct.
From a tattooing use to another tattooing use, but that's not to confuse that with the notification of ownership, with the occupant and ownership notification under the conditional use permit.
Okay. Is there any alternative recommendation for a potential radius?
I guess what I don't understand is that even if we increase, I don't really know, like, if it's at the center of the M1, if we put ourselves at the center of the M1 zoning, and if you increase it, if you make a circle all around, what would hit the residential area?
So if you notice, if you can see that, what I did is I put in a...
It's really small, it's hard to see, yes, 1,000.
So the maximum is 1,000 feet, so this distance here. So I put this in here so that way you can have gauge as far as what the distance looks like, as far as what the separation would be to a sensitive use. So you have 0 to 250, which is here, and then from 250 to 500, and then the other half is to 1,000. So you can somehow, again, this is just more of so that way you can gauge what those distances look like. But again, it's to the commission's discretion on what they feel comfortable and appropriate as far as a notification radius for owner and occupant.
Okay, thank you for that, Ron.
I'm going to suggest 500 feet.
The larger we do, we're going to circumvent future problems. It keeps going on. I keep on verifying. Because it's close to Baldwin Park, we wouldn't have to notify Baldwin Park people, would we?
That we would, yes. Part of that radius falls within, and we have to notify the adjacent cities.
I didn't know that. My suggestion would make it quite large.
Does that quite large have a number, Commissioner Holtz? Or?
You know, I just can't get that into perspective. 1,500, I don't know what area that would take in. Did you say that graph on the bottom is 1,500 all the way on the?
1,000.
Here's maybe a thought. I'm just going to throw it out there. Maybe having staff come back with what a radius would look like, and maybe offer them 3 intervals. Yeah. Right? Maybe we'll pick just 3 numbers if it's okay. It's going to require you break out the buffering on the GIS there, Ron, and maybe see what at least 3 radius options look like.
Yeah.
And maybe we can come back as part of that follow-up study session. And again, you can edit me, commissioners. Let's say 500, 1,000, 1,500. Or you can go less. I'm just throwing numbers.
Maybe 1,000. I mean, I think we're headed in the right direction with everything we're saying and discussing. Like Commissioner Redholt said, it's a big deal. It's a big issue, and I think we should.
I think he's going to choose 3 radius, so it's going to be 500, 1,000, and 1,500, or we have different numbers. So they're going to do 3 circles for us to look at.
I'll go 500,000, 1,500.
Sure, that sounds good.
Okay.
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 Whatever the majority.
You want a 4th one there, Commissioner?
Well, I thought
Reynolds?
1,000 would be, I think 500, 750, or 1,000. But if you want to go 1,500, I mean, that's whatever you guys want to do.
I'm sure Ron's going to be an expert on mapping, so I'm sure he wouldn't mind squeezing in a 4th one if you'd like.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I'd like to see 750 in there too.
Just get a string around.
Yeah, let's do 750.
Or just find a crow and follow it while it's,
All right, so the distances again, just for clarification. So 1,000 and 1,500.
So
500, 1,000, and 1,500.
Okay.
and 750. So fourth one.
Okay.
Sorry, Ron.
Sorry, one more time.
Okay, so let's do 500,
500,
750,
750,
1,000,
1,000,
and 15.
1,500. This is probably the biggest radius map I think
I'm sorry, Ron, but I think maybe that visual, though, will help us come up with I think, more realistic notification radius. So
Very good.
hopefully the hard work now could probably yield fruitful results on the back end.
Before our stuffing machine can burn out.
Wow. Okay.
Okay, so we'll come back. To confirm a conditional use permit, but with a special radius notification to owner and occupant, options for 500, 750, 1,000, and 1,500. Okay, very good.
Thank you for that, Ron. I believe item 2 is just simply acknowledging that it's in the M1 zone. That's
correct.
really all we're looking at, so
Yes.
I think it's okay to just move past that. Okay.
Now, item 3, measurement of distance for separation standards. And again, staff here is recommending that the separation, so the actual, how we measure here is from property line of the sensitive use to the building to be used for marijuana cultivation.
I'm fine with that.
You know, when you say cultivation, and I forget who brought up the point about storage or warehousing, does that fall into cultivation or is that separate?
Storage and warehouse.
In other words, you're cultivating in one building and then your inventory you're keeping in another warehouse building. Is that all part of cultivation or is that separate?
That would, the building itself, as far as how it's utilized, it'd be as a whole.
Including the inventory?
Exactly,
If they
yes.
happen to be a separate building, okay.
Exactly.
All right, good.
But we would still apply the primary, the quote-unquote separation, right?
Yes, and so what I've made note, if the commission is agreeable to that, Commissioner Jimenez made a recommendation on defining that as the primary building, the measurement to the primary building of marijuana cultivation.
And again, my idea is if in case we have like a storage shed or something along those lines, we don't necessarily apply the restriction if it's being used for some ancillary purposes. They're not directly connected with the operation of the property. And again, I'm just thinking out loud here. My fellow commissioners, you're more than welcome to comment or opine on that. Okay. So option 3 under item 3. Okay.
Okay, very good. We'll do primary building. Okay, now moving on, number 4, so separation standards. So here, now we get into discussion about distances. So now that we define the measurement from sensitive use property line to the primary building, now we're talking residential, religious, and educational. And again, residential, staff is recommending that it be a separation requirement of 300 feet.
All residential as well, correct, Ron?
That is correct.
Okay. Okay.
I'm okay with that, 300.
Okay.
Seems good.
Sounds like 300, option 4 will prevail.
Okay. Moving on to B, religious facility. Again, as mentioned, because there's a religious facility within Prosperity Business Park, no separation standard as there is a church within that M1 zone. That's staff's recommendation.
There was a discussion there by Commissioner Oates about quote-unquote grandfathering in existing and then requiring a separation requirement for any incoming. Is there any thought from? Anyone else has a comment or a concern regarding that?
I would be okay with 100 feet. I think there should be a separation. I don't know if they would care to how many feet, but maybe 100. But as we mentioned earlier, if we notice it and people come, maybe they'll, their voice will be heard and they'll speak up about how they feel.
Okay. There's a recommendation for 100.
I agree, put a number in there, people come and want to jump on it, we can talk about it. And if they don't, let's put 100 feet in.
I'm fine with option one, and if somebody, which is no separation, and if we do hear from the public and they start tossing numbers out, we can kick it around at that point. My recommendation is option one right now.
Okay, so no separation. I'm torn as well. I'd rather not do a separate. Religious facilities are not one of the sensitive, it is one of the sensitive uses.
Yes.
But we're recommending
No separation.
No separation.
Right.
And if I could just, the interesting thing about that particular religious facility, it's part of a business park. It's not like it's sitting, on a freestanding piece of property as most, religious facilities do. I remember I was on the commission when that went through and we approved that. I mean, they were desperate to fill those buildings. They were empty. Commissioner Holtz was there too. They were just struggling to get tenants. And this church came in. I don't even know that it was supposed to be long-term. But, they've been there for a long time now. But I think they take up 2 or 3 doors there. And they, at the time, it wasn't intended to be a religious facility. It was intended to be a business park. And, they wanted tenants. So, I don't know how long it's been there a long time, but, it's not like it's a building they own or, it's a freestanding church. It's not.
Okay. A separation requirement may also impact what we're seeing here as well, correct, Ron?
Yes, and and again, just to give you a so here's Prosperity Business Park. I'm not sure where it's located, where the religious facility, I believe it's on this side, but you can imagine, so there's no separations. So for example, yeah. So you can see if possibly if this parcel here, well, it's going to hit this as well. But again, I'd have to do make those measurements to see what that looks like.
Fair enough. I believe as we move forward, there's going to be other separation requirements which could further impact. So I will probably go with Commissioner Redholz on this one, that I'm okay without the separation from religious. I just don't see a lot of religious facilities wanting to expand in this area. So I'm going to say no separation as well. So I think we have almost like a 2 and 2. So we're going to need probably a Commissioner Hing. We're going to put you on the spot here. Do you have any opinion on a separation requirement? So you have 3, or you have 2 100, well, no, 3, I would say, right? Commissioner Holtz and 2 for no separation. Staff, I would defer that to you, how that looks down the road, but yeah,
I think, once we have the next study session,
Agreed.
I think we could still change, because if they don't care,
right,
maybe, we'll go from there.
And we're probably going to put you to heavy use with the mapping and maybe just food for thought as well, identifying in any map as well, any religious facilities within that area. So just a thought, but.
Okay. So we'll bring this one back for further review with a map indicating exactly what that looks like as far as separation.
Okay.
Okay.
Item 3, institutional uses.
So here staff is recommending 300-foot separation. And again, we just noted that this would eliminate cultivation along San Bernardino frontage near the elementary school. So essentially here you see, here's the elementary school here. So you have the lumberyard here, and then the Prosperity Business Park. So essentially, anything here will limit that. So again, it would be 300 feet.
Okay, 300 feet?
Sure. Like residential, I think that makes sense for
Fair
kids.
enough. Okay, I think we're okay with that, Ron.
And lastly, separation standards to any other marijuana cultivation use. And here, staff is recommending, one, no separation to any other marijuana cultivation use.
Okay, I think I already stated my point regarding this topic.
Me too, I'm fine with that.
Okay with that, yeah, that's fine.
Okay, very well.
No separation it is. And again, these are just our direction. I'm sure when we see the ordinance, if there's, any new information that's presented, we can obviously react to that information and rule accordingly.
Okay, perfect. So that concludes the presentation. Otherwise, just to, we'll come back at the second study session to show you the radius options of the 4 that you provided to us. As far as further review, we will note the primary building when we get to that point in drafting the code. We'll add that language. And then we will go ahead on the next study session, also notify the property owners of that study session within the manufacturing zone.
And also, remember, you're going to do some blow-ups of that.
I'm sorry?
You're going to do some blow-ups.
And enhance the maps.
Right. Thank you.
And also, Ron, do you have information on the buildings, like how large they are? Because sometimes we do have that information.
No, Jeff.
You don't?
We did not. We just, again, this was just a discussion. We wanted you guys to discuss this, but we did not do any extensive research on size of the buildings. I think just based on my knowledge of the area, they're very large buildings. They can range to 100,000, 200,000 square feet. I think the largest being the Tribune site.
And I believe the state regs cap the square footage of cultivation, I believe. I'm not quite sure, but maybe, again, that's a future discussion on this topic.
Yes.
Okay.
Ron, when do you anticipate the business license study session? How far off?
So based on this, I think we're looking at the second meeting in August. Yes.
Okay, the recommendation is the commission providing staff some direction and guidance. I believe we've given a little bit of that, if not a lot. And that's it, right? No resos, nothing? Just,
no resos, no,
okay.
Just direction. Thank you.
Fair enough. Thanks for that, Ron. Tarquin, thanks again for coming in and chatting with us about
Of course.
this use. Let me just get my notes here. So I believe that concludes non-hearing items. We have the continuation of oral communication. Anyone wishing to speak in the public? No? Okay. Let's go ahead and check that off. Let's move on to commission reports, comments, and miscellaneous items. Any reports from Commissioner Redholz, please?
No, just a reminder to the vast viewing audience and those here in the hall. Tomorrow night is the last of the summer concert series here at City Hall. So you might want to come out. I think it's a Katy Perry tribute band or Pink or both of them or something.
That is correct, yes.
So it's the last one. They've all been pretty good, and the music's been nice, and everybody who shows up has a good time. And tomorrow night's the last one, and it's probably going to be 120. So, get out of the house and come here and sweat with the rest of us to the oldies, sweating to the oldies. So, I'll be there, and I look forward to seeing you too.
Going to be hot and cold with that Katy Perry song.
That's right. That's right.
Anyone else? None? Okay. Planning Director's report, Ron, will you be
Planning Director's report.
bringing this home?
Yes. As far as Planning Director's report forthcoming, you have the forthcoming. August 14th, we don't have anything that is scheduled. And then moving on to August 28th, study session, Code Amendment 1802 for ADU revisions. And then second, we'll have a study session to initiate code amendment, sale of alcoholic beverage at service stations. So that is a request from an applicant. And that's it.
Thank you for that. Alon, any city council action?
No, not that I know of at the moment. There is a special meeting, budget study meeting on Thursday. That will be held this week.
Very important issues. If that's pretty much about it, we can adjourn the Planning Commission meeting for July 24th. Let the record reflect. It's 8:09. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening. Thank you for coming out.